you guys remember in 1st, 5th, and 8th grade when those old ladies would come in and bring us that arrangement of pillowcases that we got to go pick from. I remember in 1st grade, we, after we watched the Polar Express in our PJs, we all went to the cafeteria and we got to pick out our pillowcase. And as indecisive as I am, I remember I was probably one of the last ones in there picking out my pillowcase. But today I am going to be sewing a pillowcase, and I'm going to show you guys how much effort those sweet old ladies put in to sewing pillowcases just for us. So I'm going to show you guys, we're going to measure and cut, we are going to pin, and then we are going to sew. The type of pillowcase I'm making today is called a slip pillowcase. That is where you sew all 4 sides and leave a little slip in the back for your pillow insert to go in. So to start off, we are going to measure our fabric. To save time, I already cut out my fabric, but if you were going to, you would grab your pillow and you would measure around it. This is an 18 by 18 pillow, it says on the tag, but you always want to leave a couple of inches on the sides just so you have a little wiggle room, because you sew around the sides, so you need at least an inch. So here's our 18, and so I cut out, you take your measuring tape, and you flip your fabric to whatever side is going to be the inside. You take your measuring tape and you put it on the fabric. So you see, I had 18 is what my pillow said, so I'm going to measure out a 19 inches and lay that right there. And since it's a square pillow, I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I take it here and I measure out 19 inches. And this seems like it's perfect, so I wouldn't even have to cut this side. So then you just cut along here as straight as you can. If it is a little crooked, that's okay, because the edges won't get shown anyway. And so you might be wondering what that means, and I'll show you here in a second. So this will be our back panel. And I don't have enough fabric since I already cut mine, but for this panel, you would cut a 19 by 20 so that you have a little extra overlay. So you measure out 19 by 20, and then you take the second one and you cut it in half. So here is what the 2 panels will look like. You will have, this is where it's overlaid. This is where you slip your pillow in, but I'm going to show you how to pin it. I pinned up most of the sides, but I left this whole side unpinned because pinning is probably the most time-consuming part of the thing. So what you're going to do is take your fabric, and you have your pin, and you stick it through, and then come back through. So again, I'll show you again. You kind of want to do them pretty spaced out. You should have like 4 or 5 pins on each side, depending on the size of your pillow. So stick it in, and then come back out the other side. So essentially, you have your pin at the top. You always want the head of your pin to be whichever way you're gonna sew, so it's easier to pull out. So we have the head at the top, and the pointy part goes at the bottom, and there's that little piece of fabric in between. The purpose of pinning is to be able to have your fabric stay in the same place and not move anywhere while you're sewing, and it just keeps everything nice and neat. So this is what your pillow should look like. Make sure you always have your good side to good side. That's how I used to sew with my grandma, and she'd always tell me good side to good side. So this is the bad side. It's not as vibrant, it's not as colorful. This is the good side. So whichever side you want on the outside, you're gonna put on the inside for now. So how you would do it is you'd lay your good side against your good side, and then that's how you pin it. But I already have that done. So now we're going to sew, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn on whichever sewing machine you have, and you are going to always run a test strip, so you know what kind of stitch you're doing, what kind of the pace you want. Always run a test strip so you know how your sewing machine is acting, because sewing machines always have a mind of their own. Every sewing machine is different. I work with sewing machines, and I own multiple, and every single one has its own quirks and its own little unique ticks. So now that we have our pillowcase measured and pinned, we are going to sew. Pick your edge. I usually like to start at the bottom, and you start at this side, so you have your corner, And you're gonna start right here and then go down to the corner, then you'll go along your long side. So here is how I'm gonna do that. As you're going, you will pull the pins out, so that way you don't wanna sew over the metal pins ever. And this might be a little weird to you guys, but I sew a lot, and I like to sew with my shoe off, or I cannot feel the pedal, and you can get to going too quick because the rubber of your shoe, you can't tell how hard you're pressing. And so if you want that even, nice stitch, I take my shoes off. But you don't have to do that, it's up to the person. So you're gonna take it, and while you're sewing, make sure you are pushing and pulling. So this hand is gonna go on the edge and push, and this hand is gonna pull. But the pulling hand is also gonna be our pin pulling hand. So you pull your pins out and you sew. So to go over what I did at home while I'm sewing this, I took my measurements, I cut it, and make sure you always iron your fabric. If you don't iron your fabric, then you will not be able to have the clean, crisp look. As well as your stitches are gonna come out wobbly, and it's gonna look not as neat and nice as if it were to if you ironed it. So right now I'm just going down the side, and once you get a little comfortable, you can kind of pick up the pace and go quicker. And at some point, you won't even realize you're sewing. As for how long you've been sewing, it really gets easier as you go on. So if you have to start off slow, that's totally fine. Everybody starts somewhere. And then once you get to the corners, you pivot, so you have to lift up the foot, spin it, take your pin out, spin it, place the foot back down, and then sew. And make sure you always have a hold of the back. And if you ever get a little wrinkly, it's always okay to pick up your foot and move it. As well as, I have messed up quite a lot in my years of sewing, and just letting you know, it is okay if you mess up, because seam rippers are a thing. So if you mess up the seam and you have to rip the seam out, that's okay. You won't even be able to notice ever. So I'm gonna go a little quicker so that I can get this done. But my history of sewing is I've sewed with my grandma ever since I was little. I remember being 9 years old sewing with her, and I made a quilt by the time I was 9. My grandma taught us how to sew, and she actually, one of my favorite sewing memories with her was sewing hats for cancer patients. So my grandma not only taught us how to sew, but she also taught us how to do good deeds for others. She showed us how to make little hats, because when cancer patients sleep at night, their heads get cold in the winter because they don't have hair to keep them warm. But we would make little felt hats with elastic on the inside so that they could sleep with them on all night. Another corner, pivot. But as you're sewing, make sure you keep an even tempo so that the stitches all stay the same. And once you're finished, you can pull out all the pins. You can then flip your pillow, slip right side out. Cut your thread. And then flip your pillow, slip right side out, and find your pillow. And then throw your pillow in. Ooh. So I hope if you learn nothing at all for the speech, because sewing can be difficult at first, I hope if you learn nothing at all, that you at least learned a little bit of appreciation for those old ladies that would always take their time and come and show us all the pillowcases. And I just hope you realize how much time and effort they put into that. And I hope that this may have sparked some interest in your sewing. And starting off with a pillowcase is simple, and it's a simple step towards being able to sew something like a quilt or even clothes. So I hope you enjoyed my speech, and that's it. Here's your pillow.